Let me ask you something personal. At your age, maybe you're 70, 72, or even well into your 80s, you probably feel like you've seen it all. You've been through wars, raised families, worked hard, lost sleep, buried loved ones, and maybe even outlived some of your closest friends. You've lived, really lived. And when it comes to things like intimacy or your private routines, you might think, I've been doing this all my life. What could possibly be wrong now? But here's something you might not have considered. What if some of those private habits you've never really talked about, things you've done in silence, in comfort, maybe even for release, are quietly wearing your body down, piece by piece? No warning signs, no obvious symptoms, just slow, silent damage to your prostate, your sleep, your heart, your energy, even your mind. And not because you're doing something bad, not because you're dirty or shameful or wrong, but simply because no one ever told you that at this age, your body plays by different rules. And that's the truth that almost no one dares to talk about. Doctors whisper it in closed offices, friends avoid it at the coffee table, and for most men, it stays buried in silence. But not here. This is Elder Wisdom, where we talk about the things that matter, even if they're uncomfortable, because you deserve to age with confidence, clarity, and dignity. So in this video, we're going to walk through 5 common masturbation mistakes that men over 70 make. Mistakes that can lead to real long-term problems if you don't know what to look out for. You might be thinking, what mistakes? I've been doing this since I was a teenager. Exactly. But your body now isn't the same body you had at 25 or even 55. And what used to be harmless may now be quietly hurting you without your knowledge. So listen closely, because what we're about to discuss could help you avoid unnecessary pain, restore your energy, and protect the most important years you've got left. And before we get started, let me ask you this. Do you believe men over 70 deserve honest, respectful health information, free from shame and full of truth? If your answer is yes, go ahead and type "I care" in the comments. It tells me you're here for the right reasons. And if you want more heartfelt, eye-opening content like this, subscribe to Elder Wisdom. We're not here for trends. We're here for truth. All right, let's talk. Let's uncover what no one else is saying about the 5 mistakes that might be silently harming you. Now, let's begin with the first mistake. And this one, it's more common than you might think. Mistake number 1, ignoring changes in sensitivity. You might have noticed it already. Maybe it started gradually. You touch yourself like you always have. Same motion, same rhythm, same routine, but something's off. The feeling isn't quite the same. The pleasure that once came so easily now feels distant, dull, muted. And for many men, the first instinct is to push harder. More pressure, more friction, maybe even longer sessions, thinking, if I just keep going, the feeling will come back. Let me tell you about a man I once met. We'll call him John. John is 74, sharp guy, raised a family, worked construction most of his life, hands like sandpaper. He told me quietly, almost with a chuckle, that things weren't working like they used to. Said he couldn't feel much anymore down there. So he started going harder, tighter grip, more intense motion, sometimes twice a day, hoping to feel something again. But instead of pleasure, he ended up with soreness, a burning sensation. Eventually, a small tear that left him afraid to even try again. Now here's the thing, John's not alone. This happens to thousands of older men, because as you age, your nerve endings change. The skin becomes thinner. Testosterone, your main hormone for sexual function, drops. Your blood flow slows down. And yes, Your sensitivity fades, especially in the areas you've always relied on for pleasure. But here's where the damage comes in. When you try to force sensation, you create friction injuries. You risk micro tears in skin that doesn't heal as quickly anymore. You inflame nerve endings that are already struggling to function. And in the long run, that repeated trauma, it can actually desensitize you further. Meaning, the more force you use, the less you'll feel. Permanently. Now, a lot of men make the same mistake. They think, I just need to try harder. But friend, it's not about trying harder. It's about learning how your body works now, not how it used to work decades ago. So what should you do instead? First, stop thinking you need to mimic your younger years. Start thinking smarter, not harder. Try new techniques that don't depend on pressure or speed. Focus on sensation over intensity. Explore touch in a gentler, more patient way. Because yes, your body can still respond beautifully, but it needs to be approached with care. And if you're really unsure whether your changes are normal, talk to a urologist. Not because something is wrong, but because getting clarity can give you peace of mind and maybe even help you rediscover what brings you pleasure now. Remember, this isn't about giving something up. It's about adapting with wisdom. That's what aging with grace looks like. And while this mistake is mostly physical, the next one, it hits on something even deeper, your mindset. Because sometimes the harm doesn't come from the body at all. It comes from what you're carrying inside. Let's talk about that next. Mistake number 2, using it as a coping mechanism for loneliness. Now let's talk about something a little harder to admit. And I don't mean physically hard, I mean emotionally. Mistake number 2 is something I've seen more times than I can count. And it's not about the body at all. It's about the heart. Using masturbation as a way to cope with loneliness. You see, for some men, especially after retirement or after losing a partner, the days grow quieter, the nights stretch longer, and the silence can become heavy. You wake up and realize, no one's calling, no one's checking in, no one's there to sit with you over morning coffee. And before you know it, you're spending more time alone than you ever imagined. That's where Gerald found himself. He was 76, lost his wife 3 years prior, didn't have a lot of family nearby. He told me quietly that most nights he just sat in his recliner until the house felt too empty. And to distract himself, he'd turn to the one thing he could count on. Not for pleasure, but for escape. He didn't even enjoy it, really. It became a habit, something to fill the space. A momentary high in a long day of feeling forgotten. And maybe that sounds familiar. Maybe you've never said it out loud, but deep down, you know what I mean. Now look, there's nothing wrong with seeking comfort. You're human. But the problem starts when this comfort becomes a substitute for real connection, when it becomes the only way you soothe yourself. Because here's the truth, when you rely on solo pleasure to numb emotional pain, you're not healing, you're hiding from the hurt. And biologically, there's science behind this too. Masturbation releases dopamine, the same feel-good chemical your brain uses during moments of joy, connection, or reward. But when you trigger that high over and over without any emotional nourishment to back it up, your brain starts to depend on that shortcut. It can pull you away from reaching out, from making a phone call, from joining a local group, from getting back out there and living. You might start skipping your walks. You might stop going to the senior center. You might push away the people who care about you because you've got this one thing that makes you feel okay for a moment. But that moment ends, and the loneliness is still there, maybe deeper than before. Here's the hard truth. Pleasure can numb pain, but it can't replace connection. And as a man in your 70s or 80s, what you need isn't more stimulation. What you need is relationship, even if it's just a good friend, a support group, or someone to talk to once a week. So what can you do instead? Start small. Call someone, anyone. Join a men's breakfast group at your local church or recreation center. Take up a hobby that brings you into contact with other people. Gardening clubs, chess, even group exercise. And if you've been carrying the weight of loss, whether it's a spouse, a friend, or even your sense of identity, consider speaking with a grief counselor. Not because you're weak, but because healing doesn't happen in the dark. It happens in the open, with others. You are not alone, even when it feels like it, and the kind of relief you're really longing for. It doesn't come from behind closed doors. It comes from opening up. Now, we've talked about the emotional side. But the next mistake, it's back in the physical realm, and it's one a lot of older men never see coming. Let's get into it. Mistake number 3, using unsafe or overstimulating tools. Let's talk about something that's quietly becoming more and more common among older men, but very few are talking about it. Mistake number 3, using unsafe or overstimulating tools. Now I get it, there's curiosity out there. You see the ads, right? Experience pleasure like never before. Reignite your manhood. Try this device, feel 20 again. Click order, discreet shipping. It's all so easy now, and when you're alone, when no one's looking, it feels harmless. Just a little something to spice things up. Frank thought the same. Frank was 79, healthy for his age, still did his morning stretches, even rode his bike now and then. But curiosity got the better of him. He ordered a product that promised to intensify sensitivity and help with stamina. Didn't tell his doctor, didn't read much into it. It looked safe enough, rubber and wires with a USB charger. He used it a few times, and at first it was exciting, until the pain started. A raw, burning soreness he didn't expect. Then the discomfort wouldn't go away. He tried to ignore it, hoped it would heal, but the redness spread. He ended up in urgent care, embarrassed, confused, and hurting. That's the thing no one tells you about these devices. Most of them aren't made for your body. Not at this age. Not with thinner skin, not with reduced blood flow, and certainly not with the slower healing that comes with being over 70. Let's look at it from a biological point of view. Your skin becomes more fragile as you age, especially down there. It loses elasticity. There's less natural lubrication. The tissue isn't as forgiving. So when you introduce something designed for high-intensity stimulation, especially a poorly made device, it doesn't just create pleasure. It can cause micro tears, irritation, and even bleeding. And if you're not cleaning it properly, now we're talking bacterial infections, the kind that can quickly become serious when you're older. But here's the big misconception. People assume that more stimulation equals better pleasure, that gadgets will fix what aging seems to take away. But in truth, less is often more, especially at your age. You don't need high-tech tools to experience pleasure. You need patience. You need comfort. You need to understand how your body is responding now, not chase how it used to feel 20 years ago. So what's the safer way forward? Stick with your hands. Simple, familiar touch, done gently, slowly, and with awareness, is far safer and often more satisfying than anything made of plastic or wires. And if you do use a tool, make sure it's medical grade. Avoid anything that vibrates too aggressively or applies suction or compression in unnatural ways. Always clean it thoroughly. Store it in a dry place and never use it if there's even the smallest tear in your skin. Pleasure isn't about performance, it's about presence. And at this stage of life, being gentle with yourself isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Now, we've talked about tools, but what about time? What happens when you do it too often without giving your body the rest it truly needs? Let's move into the next mistake, and this one might surprise you. Mistake number 4. Masturbating too frequently without rest. All right, let's talk about mistake number 4, and this one's a bit tricky, because on the surface, it actually looks like a good thing. You're active, you're regular, you're proving to yourself, and maybe even to others, that age hasn't taken that spark away. But here's the problem, you're doing it too often, too frequently, without enough rest. And in your 70s, that can start to wear you down, quietly and steadily. Let me tell you about Tom. Tom was 71. He prided himself on his routine. Every morning walk, breakfast, the newspaper, and then some private time. He said it helped him feel young and alive. He'd even joke about it, said it was his version of a multivitamin. But over time, something changed. He started feeling tired all the time, mentally foggy, easily irritated. He noticed a dull ache in his lower back, a pressure in his groin that wouldn't go away. And intimacy, even when it was just with himself, started to feel more like an obligation than a release. Tom was doing what a lot of older men believe is the right thing, keeping the engine running. You've heard the phrase, use it or lose it. And while there's some truth to that, here's the part that rarely gets talked about. Overuse, especially in older age, can be just as harmful as disuse. You see, every time you stimulate yourself, your body goes through a cycle: arousal, climax, recovery. In your younger years, that recovery was quick. Now, it takes longer. Your hormone levels, especially testosterone, take more time to reset. Your prostate, which plays a key role in sexual function, can become inflamed or irritated if it's repeatedly stressed with no downtime. And your energy, which is already precious, starts to get depleted. Biologically, it's a real strain. It can throw off your hormone rhythm, increase inflammation, and contribute to chronic fatigue. Some men even experience depressed moods, low motivation, and restless sleep, and never connect it to how often they're stimulating themselves. And that's the tricky part, because no one's keeping track for you. It's a personal act, a private one. But if you're feeling more drained than energized, more agitated than relaxed, more pressured than peaceful, it's probably time to slow down. Now, don't misunderstand me. Pleasure is still part of life, but your body has changed, and that means your pace needs to change too. So what's a healthy rhythm? There's no perfect number, but for many older men, 2 to 3 times a week is plenty. Some are fine with less. What matters is that you listen to your body. Are you waking up tired? Feeling heavy in your lower body? Getting irritable without knowing why? Having discomfort in the pelvic area? These are all signs your body might be asking for rest. The goal here isn't to quit. It's to balance, to honor the energy you have, to protect the parts of you that are still working beautifully. Because remember, rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. And at this point in life, wisdom is your greatest strength. Now, we've covered the physical, the emotional, and even the habitual. But there's one last mistake that too many men overlook. And this one, it could affect something even more serious. Your heart. Let's talk about it. Mistake number 5. Not monitoring heart or blood pressure before intense activity. Now let's move into the 5th and final mistake, and honestly, this one can be life-changing, if not life-saving. It's something most older men never think twice about when they're alone, but it's one of the most important areas of your health to watch. Mistake number 5. Not monitoring your heart or blood pressure before engaging in intense activity. Let me tell you about Alvin. Alvin was 78, lived alone, took care of himself, a little arthritis in the knees, a couple pills for blood pressure, but nothing major. He considered himself in good enough shape for his age. One evening, he went through his normal routine, took his evening walk, watched the news, then decided to unwind before bed. A little personal time. Nothing out of the ordinary. But this time, things felt different. As soon as he reached climax, he felt lightheaded. His chest tightened slightly. His breathing went shallow. He sat there, sweating, not sure if he had just overdone it or if it was something more serious. But he didn't tell anyone. 2 weeks later, he fainted in his hallway. Turns out his blood pressure had been spiking higher than he realized during those moments of stimulation. And it finally caught up to him. Now, here's what most people don't realize. Even though masturbation is a private and seemingly gentle act, your body responds as if it's exercising. Your heart rate increases, your blood vessels dilate, adrenaline kicks in. And if you already have heart disease, high blood pressure, or even mild arrhythmia, that temporary spike in activity can put real stress on your cardiovascular system. And because it's done in isolation, no one's there to notice the warning signs. No one's there to ask, "Are you okay?" And sometimes we men don't even ask ourselves that question. There's this common belief. It's just a private act. What could go wrong? But physiologically, your body doesn't know the difference between stimulation and exercise. If your heart isn't ready for that level of arousal, you could trigger chest pain, shortness of breath, or worse, a cardiac episode that no one sees coming. So what should you do? If you're on heart medications, if you've ever been told you have high blood pressure, or if you've experienced dizziness, fainting, or chest tightness during or after stimulation, talk to your doctor, not because you have to stop altogether, but because you need to understand your body's limits. And even if your doctor gives you the green light, be mindful. Pay attention to how you feel during and after. Your body is always speaking. You just have to listen, because here's the truth. Pleasure should never come at the cost of your health. And taking 5 minutes to check your vitals could make all the difference. So we've covered 5 mistakes. Some physical, some emotional, some even hidden in plain sight. But what does all of this mean on a deeper level? Not just for your body, but for your soul. Let's talk about that now. Let me say this plainly. I know this isn't an easy conversation to have, especially for men who grew up in a time where you didn't talk about this stuff. You were told to toughen up, to keep things private, to never admit when something felt off. But silence can lead to harm. What you don't talk about, you can't address. And what you don't address, you end up suffering through alone. That's not strength, that's quiet pain. And you've carried enough of that in your life. This video, this conversation, it's not about guilt. It's not about shame. It's about awareness. Because when you understand what's really happening in your body, you can make choices from a place of wisdom, not fear. You can still experience pleasure. You can still feel connected to yourself. But now you'll be doing it with care, with clarity, with dignity. If anything you've heard today hit a nerve, if you felt seen or maybe a little uncomfortable, that's okay. That just means it matters. So take one small step today. If something doesn't feel right, talk to your doctor. If you're feeling alone, call someone. If you're tired, rest. If you're curious, learn more. You don't have to figure it all out today. Just begin. Because aging doesn't mean giving up pleasure. It means learning how to embrace it with wisdom. It means adapting, not shrinking.
Growing, not retreating. And most of all, staying true to what really matters. Your health, your peace, and your pride. And that's exactly what ElderWisdom is here for. So let's quickly go over what we talked about today. The 5 mistakes older men make with solo pleasure that can silently harm them. Number 1, ignoring sensitivity changes. Number 2, using masturbation to cope with loneliness instead of healing. Number 3, using unsafe, overstimulating tools that weren't made for aging skin. Number 4, doing it too often without giving the body time to rest. And number 5, not monitoring heart or blood pressure before stimulation. Each of these on its own might seem small, but together, they can shape the quality of your life in ways you may not even realize. Now I want to hear from you. Have you noticed any of these changes in yourself or in someone you care about? Drop a comment below. Let's normalize these conversations. No judgment, no shame. Just men talking honestly about what it means to age well. And if you found this video helpful, if it made you think, if it brought you clarity, or if you felt respected here, consider subscribing to Elder Wisdom. This is your space, your community, and we'll keep having these conversations one truth at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for choosing to grow. Stay wise, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.